Hello, everyone! What if a single moment of jealousy and a single impulsive choice could lead to a decade-long war? The Trojan War wasn't just a battle between empires. It was a story sparked by a golden apple and the most beautiful woman in the world. This is the tale of how a divine beauty contest brought down a city and forged legends. For 10 years, 1,000 ships laid siege to an unbreachable city. Inside its walls, the greatest warrior of his generation waited, while outside, an invincible hero fought a one-man war. But this story isn't about brute force, it's about a betrayal, a brutal act of revenge, and a trick so cunning it changed history forever. This is the true story of the Trojan War. You think you know the story of the Trojan Horse, but what if I told you the war started over a beauty contest judged by a man who didn't even know he was a prince? The Trojan War is full of rage, honor, and sacrifice, but all began with one small act of divine sabotage. Get ready to dive deep into the myth that has captivated the world for centuries. The epic of the Trojan War is a sprawling narrative, a tapestry woven with the threads of divine interference, mortal ambition, and the tragic inevitability of fate. Its story is far more intricate than a simple siege, delving into the characters' inner lives, their motives, and the devastating consequences of their actions. A fateful choice and a broken oath, the war's genesis lies in a celestial wedding feast. The goddess of discord, Eris, deliberately uninvited, sought to sow chaos. She threw a golden apple inscribed to the fairest into the gathering, which was immediately claimed by the three most powerful goddesses: Hera, queen of the gods; Athena, goddess of wisdom and war; and Aphrodite, goddess of love. Their rivalry was so fierce that Zeus himself, unwilling to pick a side, tasked a mortal to judge. His choice fell upon Paris, a prince of Troy, who had been raised as a shepherd, unaware of his royal heritage. The goddesses appeared before him, each offering a bribe. Hera promised him supreme power as king of all Asia. Athena offered unparalleled wisdom and military glory. And Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, his heart swelling with desire, chose Aphrodite. This choice sealed the fate of 10 nations. The most beautiful woman was Helen, daughter of Zeus and Leda, and wife of Menelaus, the king of Sparta. When Paris, guided by Aphrodite, visited Sparta as a guest, he violated all hospitality codes by abducting Helen and taking her back to Troy. Accounts differ on whether she went willingly, entranced by Aphrodite, or was taken by force, but her departure was an affront that could not be. Ignored, Menelaus, enraged and heartbroken, called upon his brother, Agamemnon, the High King of Mycenae. Together, they invoked a solemn oath made years earlier by all of Helen's suitors, who had sworn to defend the man she chose. The oath bound the greatest kings and heroes of Greece to their cause. The Achaean fleet of 1,000 ships began to assemble, ready to cross the Aegean Sea and besiege the mighty city of Troy. The gathering storm, arrogance, and prophecy, the assembly of the Greek army, was not without its own conflicts. Odysseus, known for his cleverness, feigned madness to avoid the war. As a prophecy foretold, he would be gone for 2 decades. The Greeks saw through his ruse and forced him to join. The great warrior Achilles, born of the sea nymph Thetis, was also hidden away by his mother, who knew his destiny was to either live a long uneventful life or die a glorious, but short one at Troy. Odysseus once again revealed his cleverness and found Achilles, who chose glory and joined the fleet. Their journey to Troy was fraught with divine displeasure. Agamemnon, arrogant in his power, killed a sacred deer of the goddess Artemis. To placate her and allow the winds to carry the fleet, he was forced to sacrifice his own daughter, Iphigenia. This brutal act would haunt the royal family of Mycenae for years to come. When they finally arrived at Troy, the war became a grim reality. On the Trojan side, the great city was led by the venerable King Priam and his sons, the noble Hector and the impulsive Paris. Hector, the champion of Troy, was a man of impeccable honor, devoted to his city, his wife Andromache, and their young son. He was the city's shield, its hope, and its ultimate tragic hero. The 10-year stalemate and the rage of heroes, the war settled into a long and grueling stalemate. The Greeks could not breach Troy's formidable walls, and the Trojans were outnumbered by the vast Achaean army. The war's most pivotal moments were shaped not by military might, but by the pride and passions of its greatest heroes. The most famous of these episodes is the Rage of Achilles. After a successful raid, Agamemnon, the High King, was forced by an oracle to return a captured priestess to her father in a fit of pique. He took Briseis, a different war captive who had been awarded to Achilles. Humiliated and enraged, Achilles withdrew from battle, declaring he and his men would not fight as long as their honor was stained. Without Achilles, the tide of the war turned dramatically. The Trojans, led by Hector, pushed the Greeks back to their camp, even threatening to burn their ships. Desperate, Achilles' closest companion, Patroclus, pleaded with him to return. When Achilles refused, Patroclus borrowed his armor, hoping to strike fear into the Trojans and rally the Greeks. Patroclus fought bravely, but in his hubris, he overextended himself and was killed by Hector. The news of Patroclus' death drove Achilles into a grief-stricken, unstoppable rage. He donned a new, magnificent set of armor forged by the god Hephaestus and stormed into battle, a force of nature. He slaughtered countless Trojans in his furious advance until he came face to face with Hector. The two great champions of their nations faced each other in a final, climactic duel. Achilles, fueled by vengeance, slew Hector in a final, brutal act of desecration. He tied Hector's body to his chariot and dragged it around the city walls, an act that shocked both mortals and gods alike. Only when King Priam came to Achilles' tent, a desperate old man begging for his son's body, did Achilles' humanity return, and he relented. The war continued, but the great heroes began to fall. The mighty Ajax went mad with grief and humiliation after losing a contest for Achilles' armor, and took his own life. Achilles himself was finally struck down by an arrow, guided by Apollo, which pierced his one vulnerable spot, his heel. The Trojan Horse and the fall of Troy. After 10 years of stalemate, the war seemed to have no end. The cunning Odysseus devised a plan, so ingenious it could only have been born of a master strategist. The Greeks would build a giant wooden horse, large enough to contain their elite warriors. The rest of the Greek army would then burn their camp and sail away, pretending to abandon the siege. The plan was a masterpiece of deception. The Greeks left behind a single man, Sinon, who would tell the Trojans a fabricated story that the horse was a sacred offering to Athena, and that if the Trojans brought it into their city, it would make their city invincible. He also warned them that if they destroyed it, it would bring the goddess's wrath down upon them. Despite the desperate warnings of the priest Laocoon and the prophetess Cassandra, whose prophecies were always ignored, the Trojans celebrated their supposed victory. They pulled the horse inside the city walls, believing it to be a divine sign of their triumph. That night, As the city slept in a drunken stupor, the Greek warriors, led by Odysseus, emerged from the horse's belly. They opened the city gates, and the rest of the Greek army, having returned under the cover of darkness, poured into the city. The sack of Troy was a night of unbridled slaughter and terror. The city was burned, its people massacred, and its ancient lineage brought to a catastrophic end. The great city of Troy was no more. The war was over, but the troubles of the Greek heroes were just beginning. The gods, angered by the Greek sacrilege and arrogance, ensured that their journeys home would be long and filled with immense suffering, a bitter price to pay for a hard-won and ultimately hollow victory. 10 years of war couldn't breach the walls of Troy, but a single gift from the enemy brought them down in a single night. The city that defied 1,000 ships for a decade fell not to an army, but to a lie carved in wood. The story of the Trojan War shows us that even the greatest heroes are flawed, and the biggest victories can come from the most cunning deceptions. Thanks for joining me on this epic adventure. If this tale resonated with you, let me know by hitting the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content that explores the myths that shaped our world. Thank you.